Okay. Welcome everyone to Resumes and Cover Letters, making them better than before. And so in this Career Academy, this is our first session of the semester, and we will be talking about resumes and cover letters as it says. And so while many of you may have a resume and cover letter, this is a great time to strengthen what you have or to learn how to build a new one. Okay. First, I'm controlling and speaking. Sorry. So, go here. Okay. So what is a resume and what is its purpose? A resume is your primary marketing document. So it's how employers know who you are and what experiences you have. And therefore you see it summarizes those experiences, your skill sets, and your qualifications. A resume should be a quick and easy document to read. So you don't want to make it too long. We'll talk about that more in a bit. It showcases your skill sets through short, high impact statements with streamlined bulleted lists. So the goal of your resume, of course, is to land you an interview. And once you get the interview, then you can land the job. So we really want you to have a strong resume when you're applying for a job or an internship. Okay, so resumes have different sections. And so one of the first sections you will see in your resume is the heading. So your heading includes your full name, your first and your last name, no nicknames, your full given name, your city and state. You no longer need to put your full address on the resume, although in some industries, employers still expect it. So in finance or in business, you might see that the employer expects your full address on there. But now with identity theft and different breaches and security, you no longer need to put your full address. So city and state will be sufficient. And on occasion, you can put city, state, and zip code. Then you want to have your telephone number on there. Your telephone number to the phone that you will answer. So make sure your voicemail is available for an individual to leave a message for you. Make sure you hear that phone ringing or that's a phone that you respond to. And it can be a cell phone. Most times now it is a cell phone number. And then you want to have an email address. Your email address should be a professional email address. We recommend you use your mercy.edu email address. You can't go wrong. And then you can also, if you have a LinkedIn account, add in your LinkedIn account. That's a great way to let employers learn a little bit more about you. So that's the heading section of the resume. Next is skipped one. Next is the education section. And so the education section, it comes under the heading, and sometimes you may have seen resumes where individuals put their education section at the bottom of the resume. And we typically see that for more experienced career professionals, but for those who are still in college earning the credential, we recommend you bring that education to the top of your resume because it's so important to show that you are actively getting that credential now, and we want that to stand out to employers. So you want to put your Mercy College, Dobbs Ferry, New York. No matter what campus you're on, we put Dobbs Ferry, New York as the conferring institution of your degree. So put Dobbs Ferry, New York, and then you want to write out your full degree name. So Bachelor of Science in whatever your major is, or Bachelor of Arts in whatever your major is. You see there's a GPA there, so you can put the GPA. The rule of thumb with GPA is that you want to put it if it is a 3.0 or higher. If it's lower than that, we don't recommend that you put it. It doesn't mean that you won't get a job or an interview. It's just that you showcase it a little bit more when it's a 3.0 or higher. Okay, it stands out a little bit more. Next, you want to put your expected graduation date or the date that you've graduated. So expected May 2020, what it is. My camera's blocking it a little bit. So expected May 2020, or if May 2020 has passed already, or your date has passed, you just put the month and a year. Then you can also add relevant courses under your education section. That's a good way to show employers that there are specific credentials that you, or different material that you have now a knowledge base in, and highlight some of your upper level classes. So you don't really want to put some lower level classes like intro to math or reading. You want to put the upper level classes that are relevant to your particular major. Okay, so after the education section, that then comes your experiences. That's when you show what different employment opportunities you've had in the past or presently. And resumes are written, let me just say, in reverse chronological order. So your most current job should be at the top of your resume in the experience section, and then you work your way back, okay? So in this case, you can see that BronxNet Studios is the name of the company, so that you write the name of the company, and then you write the city and state for that company. No need to put the zip code there. And then underneath that, you want to put your job title. So in this case, the student was an intern, and then he lists the dates on to the right-hand side of that information, the start date and the end date. And underneath that are the bulleted list of his responsibilities. So remember, we talked about making sure you have strong bullets that are concise and impactful. So in this case, you will notice that all of the bullets begin with action verbs: operated, instructed, worked. And so you always want to start with an action verb to illustrate what your responsibilities were. And then you want to quantify wherever you can. So if you look at the second job under Camp Nabby, when the person was a counselor, the first bullet says designed and planned camp activities for children ages 8 to 12. So the 8 to 12 is a quantifying of what age group they worked with. We don't recommend you have a lot of bullets. 3 to 5 bullets is standard and recommended. If you have a little bit more, that is okay. You just want to be conscientious of the space on your resume, because we really want you to try to keep it to the 1-page recommendation. Okay, so in your experience section, and what you need to include is jobs and internships that you've held. Sometimes volunteer experiences. I might recommend that since they weren't paid, or if they weren't paid or they weren't in your industry, maybe you can have another section called volunteer experience. Although sometimes the internship is not paid, and you would put that under work experience, because that should be more closely related to your field. And your volunteer experience, I have here, if it's particularly relevant to your application, otherwise use a separate section. So that's why you would make the decision on whether volunteer experience goes under experiences or in its own section titled volunteer. Also, always list positions in reverse chronological order. So I just mentioned that. And you want to make sure your most recent job experience or internship experience is at the top, most recent or current. If you're still working at the organization, that should be first under your experiences section. Then include a space between positions at different locations. This helps the employer easily follow the resume and know the different organizations you worked with. No space between positions at the same organization. So I mentioned the job on the other page, Camp Nabby. If I was camp counselor at Camp Nabby, and then I was senior counselor at Camp Nabby, then I can just list the counselor position with the bullets, and then the next position with the bullets under there. Never writing Camp Nabby again because the organization has already been listed. So a tip for you all is related experiences and additional experiences sections can be used if needed. And so this is a good way to get information that is not most current to the top of your resume. You just call the section either related experiences or relevant or additional experiences. And this again highlights information that might be further down on your resume. Okay, so we talked about resumes should have strong, impactful bullet points. So bullet points are used to describe your experiences. They should not be in paragraphs, we don't recommend that, or in full sentences. So they really are just short, concise bits of information. Do you want to quantify those experiences when possible? So I gave you the example of the camp counselor who mentioned they worked with children ages 8 through 12. That is a way to quantify your experiences. You want to begin each bullet, again, with an action verb that demonstrates the skills that you've used. So some action verbs might include responsible for, maintained, provided, assisted, taught. So those are excellent action verbs to use to illustrate what experiences you had at that organization and what responsibilities you had. Write your bullet points in the first person, but do not use personal pronouns such as I, me, or my. So I wouldn't say I was responsible for babysitting children. I might say responsible for babysitting children ages 5 through 10. Okay, so I take out personal pronouns. Then you want to write your bullets in the appropriate tense. So if I'm no longer doing that job, then I want to write in the past tense. Okay, so if I say, if I'm currently in the position, I might say provide care to elderly patients. If I no longer work in that position, then it changes to provided care to elderly patients. Okay, so you want to end bullets with or without a period. The choice is yours. Just make sure you're consistent. All right, another section you can have on your resume is the leadership and activities section. Volunteer is there, and I mentioned that you can also have a volunteer section. But the leadership and activities section, we'll focus on that for a moment. In this section, you want to highlight some of your extracurricular activities. So when you think about it like extracurricular, you might know that this is where you showcase your club activities. So if you're part of any clubs or organizations, this is where you showcase any athletic sports that you're a part of or teams that you're a member of. Or if you've done anything like you were an RA at the college or something, this is where you highlight that because it's a leadership and it's an activity and you want to showcase that to an employer. Employers like to know that you not only have experience with the profession and experience in the field of work that you're going into, but they also want to know that you do additional things, that you show leadership in other areas, and that you participate in other aspects of a college or a community setting that you're in. This makes you as an employee, a future employee, well-rounded, and employers like to see individuals well-rounded. So now in this section, you can outline this section or format it like you would one of your work experiences, because if you notice, this outline looks very similar to the work experiences. You have the name of the organization, the city and state, then you have your job title and the dates worked. Now, if you are low on space, a tip is you can just write your job title, you write it all in one line, job title, comma, name of organization. Okay, so that's a great way, and then the date. That's a great way to condense some space if you're running short on space. Another section on the resume is skills. So you only want to list the hard skills here, although we're starting to find that employers are open to seeing some of those soft skills. So the choice is yours. However, we do recommend hard skills listed, and the hard skills include your computer and your language skills. Then, if you are in the technical field of computer science, information technology, or cybersecurity, for example, you can list this section as technical skills. And there you want to put programming language. So you want to speak to aspects of the field that are relevant. Programming language, operating systems you are familiar with, software you work with, networks and protocols, and any certifications you have. And finally, if you're majoring in nursing or a healthcare field, you may also want to list your certifications. And sometimes I like to recommend that students bring those certifications up to the top, because again, if you are a nursing student, for example, you really want to showcase that you have passed your nursing exams and you are now a registered nurse. You want employers to see that right away rather than having it buried at the bottom of your resume. But as you become more of an experienced professional, or this is sometime down the road, then it's okay that it comes further down on your resume if it's been several years have passed. But right now, I recommend having those things showcased at the top of the resume. If you add the certifications to the top, you can place that under the education section. Okay, so that concludes sections on the resume. And now I am going to go through with you resume tips, okay, to not forget. So these are some of the don'ts on a resume, what you want to make sure you don't do and make sure you have in place. So on average, as I mentioned, we recommend the resume should be 1 page. Also, as I mentioned, career changers or experienced career professionals may have some differences in their resumes. Their resumes may be longer, maybe 2 pages. In some cases, it could be 3 pages. Also, if you are going into an academic field or an employer simply requests it, you may have a CV. What a CV is a curriculum vitae, and they are much, much longer, somewhere up to 20, 30 pages. They're very long, and they list a lot of information, and we can share more about that at another point. Or you can make an appointment with Career if you want to learn more. On your resumes, you want to make sure you're using font that is easy to read, and the size should be no smaller than 10.5. Now, sometimes individuals will go as small as 10. Just make sure your resume is still legible for the reader. You don't want to use unconventional formatting or symbols that can be distracting to the reader or is off-putting. So you wouldn't use a font that's like curly cues or a script font. You want to use something that's easy to read. You don't need a lot of symbols on your resume. You don't really need any at all. You certainly don't need a picture on your resume. However, in some fields and industries, you might find that these things are acceptable. So a graphic designer, for example, may have a more elaborate resume, may have color on their resume. Those are some traditional things we don't recommend, but if you're in those fields, then you want to align yourself with those fields. And again, Career can help you specifically create a resume that matches your particular industry. Next, you do not want to use full sentences on the resume. Employers want to read through it quickly. So they don't want to take a lot of time to read full sentences or paragraph formats. So use bullets for your experiences, as you just saw examples of. And we have learned that employers take up to 7 seconds to review a resume. 7 seconds, as you know, is not very long. And so you want to position yourself to give information that is quick and easy to read and easy to follow and scan. Next, you only want to use a professional email address. So as I mentioned, when I started with the sections, we were talking about the header, You want to use an email address that sounds professional. And so one recommendation is using your Mercy email address. You can't go wrong with that. However, you can create a personal email address. You don't want to use something that is inappropriate, like Foxy Lady 25 or Hubba Dude at Gmail. So you want to have something that is professional. So if you have to create one, do so, or use your Mercy College email. Now, just remember, make sure you're checking this email address. So if you use your Mercy College email, make sure you check that regularly if you are applying for jobs so you don't miss any communications with employers. Then you want to write in the first person without using personal pronouns and always use a correct verb tense. So we talked about that already. Then you don't want to overload your resume with jargon or elaborate designs. So again, you don't need a lot of fancy fonts or features on the resume, a lot of elaborate wording on the resume. Just keep things plain and simple, because remember the point of the resume? To get you an interview. And during that interview, that's where you can expound a little bit more and talk to the employer with more detail. All right, the next is you don't want to list your hobbies or what your weekend plans are. It may sound funny, but some individuals do it. We've had one resume that you'll see soon that had some things on there that were not the most appropriate for a resume. So I'll show you that in a second. But you don't need to list what you like on the resume or what you plan to do. You just want to strictly focus on your work experiences and your academic experiences. Do not include unnecessary information such as marital status, religion, political status, or even your social security number. You just want to be careful and mindful with what kind of information you provide. These things, if you are hired, these are the information or the pieces of information, some of them anyway, that your HR professional will gather from you, and it does not belong on the resume. Then you don't want to include references or even the statement, references available upon request. It is understood from the employer that they will ask you for references, and when they do, you will provide references. So you don't need to say that any longer. All right, now I want to share with you some resume resources. So I've given you a lot of information about resumes. There's a lot that goes in them. And so, rightfully so, because we want you to have a strong resume. We want you all to get interviews and then ultimately to land internships and jobs. So, of course, you're not going to remember everything that was said today, but we have some resources on our career and professional development website. We have resumes and cover letters for our various career communities. And you can find that at career.mercy.edu. These resume sample guides are wonderful because they're chock full of information, including they have sample resume formats you can look at. They have a list of action verbs, so you can try to find the best verb for your bullets. They give you some sample bullets for related experiences. If you were a cashier and you don't know quite what to say as a cashier, you can look and see some samples on what bullets could look like for a person who worked as a cashier. And then finally, we give career-specific resume samples. So remember I mentioned that different industries might require a little differences with how they expect the resume to be formatted. And so you can see some of those differences through our guides. Okay, so now it's your turn. I'm just going to take a few minutes, maybe 7 seconds, and let you look at the resume and see if you can find any errors. Okay, if you look very closely, you can probably see some errors there. One, quickly, is the individual uses I If you look down at their McDonald's job, it says, I took orders for people. You remember, you don't use personal pronouns on resumes. And then under the skills section, they have some interesting things there that they play video games and they eat sandwiches. So those are definitely some inappropriate things that you would not want to see on your resume because it's not relevant to any of your work experience or what you can provide for the company. Okay, so just be sure that you align your resume with the features that we're recommending today, so you don't end up with a resume like this and maybe not get that interview from the employer. Okay, so now we're going to move on to cover letters. Cover letters accompany resumes, and most professional jobs or internships will ask you to provide a cover letter. Cover letters can seem daunting to write, but if you follow some of the suggestions I will provide today, you will be just fine in putting together your cover letter. So a strong cover letter accomplishes the following. It identifies the exact position you're applying for. And so you can, if it has a requisition number, you saw the job online, you can include that requisition number if applicable. It also summarizes your strengths and experiences that are relevant to the job description. So this is where you want to do some research and make sure you look over the job description very closely and highlight some of the aspects that the employer has indicated that they are looking for in a candidate. Now, you're not restating your resume, but you are highlighting and going into a little greater depth about some of your experiences that are found on your resume. Then you want to provide the the cover letter provides the employer with examples of how and when you developed or demonstrated those particular skills. So if you indicate that you have strong interpersonal skills based on what they're looking for, you can tell where you received those skills or how you gained those skills. So you might say, when I worked at this organization, I was able to work very closely with customers or patrons, and I developed those interpersonal skills. So you can elaborate on that. Then the cover letter accomplishes helping the hiring manager understand how the position fits into your short-term and long-term career plan. Finally, it alleviates any concerns or red flags that you think they might have when reading your resume. So maybe they are seeing that you have 3 years of experience and they were looking for 4 years of experience in the field. Well, this is your time to showcase why you feel like, although you might be a year shy of having that experience, you do have very strong qualifications for the job. And then you can proceed to tell them why those qualifications match who they're looking for and why you are the best candidate for the job. So this is your time to sell yourself in an appropriate way. You don't obviously want to be too cocky, but you also want to make sure that you showcase yourself as a strong candidate for the position, because you're going to answer the question for the employer, why me, why they should hire you over another candidate. So some cover letter tips now, not to forget. Be sure to write a new cover letter every time you apply for the position. That's so important because an employer really does not need to see that you are talking about another position when applying for their job. That's the surefire way to not get the interview. Then you want to tell your story. Personalize the cover letter so the employer gets to know who you are professionally. And the key word there is professionally. Remember, you're not telling about your hobbies or your lived experiences outside of work and academic experiences. Now, you can say something that kind of draws them to those things a little bit, but that is mainly where you're staying focused on your professional, which is your work experiences and your academic experiences. So don't overshare. That is key. All right. They don't necessarily need to know where you grew up. They don't need to know your family status. They don't need to know personal information about any beliefs that you hold. All they need to know is why you are the best candidate for the job when it comes to your professional experiences and your academic experiences. Okay, so I like to call this the anatomy of the cover letter. And this is a sample that you can find in the cover letter guides, and it outlines for you how your cover letter should be set up. The first part, you see the setup from writing the letter, your name and contact information at the top. And I always tell students that you can feel free to use the same heading you use for your resume. That's fine too. And then you want to list the date and then the contact information of who you're applying, who is receiving your application for this job. If you don't have a name of an individual, you can simply say hiring manager. Then in the first paragraph, you want to be clear as to which role you are applying for. Now, as you know, many organizations have multiple jobs that they're hiring for at a given time. So you want to indicate which particular job you're applying to. All right, and then you can just read that some example within there. Then in the second paragraph, and in the first paragraph, let me add, you could add some nice anecdotal statement about why you're interested in this job. So once you let the employer know where you found the job and what job you're applying to, maybe share why you're applying for this job. Maybe if you are in education, or maybe you attended that school as a child and you always had such good experiences with your teachers and you would like to give back. Or maybe if it's a hospital, for example, that hospital is renowned for their technology or for their care with a particular group of patients, and you want to highlight that and be a part of that organization. In the second paragraph, you want to keep his or her attention. So you want to keep their attention by now going into depth about an experience that you have that fits what they are looking for. And in the last paragraph, you want to close with the next steps. You can also put some anecdotal information there. You can summarize again why you want to work for this particular organization. And then you can list that there. But you also want to ask the employer what the next steps are without asking what the next steps are. So you're asking essentially for that interview, right? Because remember, your resume and your cover letter is designed to get you that interview. So you want to tell them that you would like to discuss this further and you would love to have an opportunity to interview with them. All right. And then you close with your closing sincerely, your name underneath, and you want to sign your name in cursive, particularly in the middle of that. Okay. So now just going back to the resumes for a moment, why I recommend that you do not put graphics on your resume or any specialty fonts or colors, that is because resumes are often used going through what we call applicant tracking systems or ATS systems. 90% of companies, large companies anyway, use these tracking systems to search for qualified candidates. And you don't want to have items on your resume that can't be read by the system and then kind of gets put to the side and doesn't go through to that employer. So these systems scan for contextual keywords, key phrases in the resume and CVs. They surface candidates that best match the position while filtering those who do not. So remember when I said when you're writing your cover letter, but similarly with your resume, you want to look at that job description, look at the keywords in that job description and make sure some of those words are also on your resume as well as on your cover letter. So to get through ATS systems, you want to be sure to use exact keywords. So again, refer to the job description. Use the skills section. You can use that to highlight some things. Then you want to write out acronyms. So do not just put an acronym down without spelling it out because an employer may not know what that means. And so you want to make sure they can follow your resume and know what you did. Use spell check. Never give a resume or a cover letter with any spelling errors or grammatical errors. And then to test all this out, you can use jobscan.co to see how well your resume might fare to a particular job description. It's a great tool, and I recommend that you use it. I'm going to tell you more about that in a second. But there's a little note down there that I want you to turn your attention to. It says 75% of resumes are never read by a human. That's a large number. So here's how to make sure your resume moves forward. So we talked about Jobscan, and here's a little bit more about Jobscan. Jobscan can be found at jobscan.co, and it uses similar software to the ATS systems. So it simulates an ATS system. On this website, you can upload your resume and the job description, and then compare your resume to that job description. What it does is it does a match rate, and it generates this to see how well your resume fits in or plugs into the job description. It breaks down by category on how to improve your resume. So not only does it tell you if your resume matches or not, it then tells you what things you can do to increase your match rate. The nice thing about this site is it allows up to 5 free scans a month, or if you want more, you can have a subscription. It also includes a LinkedIn scan feature, which is pretty neat. Okay, so that concludes this session. We ask that you please scan the QR code or use the bit.ly to complete our survey so you can get attendance for today. Remember, if you attend 3 of the 5 Career Academy sessions, you will be entered in a drawing to win a pair of Apple Airpods. Also, you will have an opportunity to receive our Career Academy badge. It's a digital badge that you can showcase on your LinkedIn account or your social media account. If you have any questions, you can contact us at CPD. That's cpd@mercy.edu, and we can connect you with a coach if you want to work on your resume or cover letter, or you just want to know more about the applying for jobs or internships. We are happy to help you. Thank you for joining the session today. 4 more to go this semester, and I hope that you all attend those as well. Take care.
Hi,